Air conditioning's not quite kicked in yet. Also, if you can hear music in the background that is not the one that I put in post-production, that's because my sister is cleaning the bathroom, and who am I to stop her from blasting tunes while she's doing chores? Hello my friends, and welcome to this tarot lesson, where we are not going to be talking about the cards specifically. An unusual one, I know. In this lesson, I wanted to go over the principles of building questions for your tarot readings. Specifically, how to build good questions that maximize the results of our readings. I have covered this topic before in a written post, but that was almost 2 years ago. So I thought that this would be a great time to cover this topic again, and maybe add a couple of things that I have learned over the past 2 years. To clarify some things for those of you that might be new, when we do readings for ourselves, we ask the tarot cards questions in order to get an answer for the current situation or struggle that we might be facing. But not all questions are created equal. Some questions that we might want our cards to answer might not be questions our cards can answer. And sometimes the way that we ask a question ends up being counterintuitive to an answer that we want to understand. So here, I hope that I can cover some of the basic principles that I use to create tarot questions that provide useful and actionable answers to life's big questions. Starting with focusing on yourself. When I say to focus on yourself in this situation, I mean to ask questions that are about you and not about someone else. Obviously, if you're reading for someone else, you'll want to make it about them, but the aim is that the question should always be about the querent and not about someone else outside of your reading. Why? Because other people did not consent to be part of this reading. You consented to be part of this reading. It's really just a case of respect, both for yourself and for others. In a lot of cases, people will come to tarot readers with questions about other people in a bid for understanding. Or leverage, in a case of a couple of people that I have read for in the past. But remember that we're reading the flow of energy when we are reading tarot cards, and that other people can be very protective of their own energy. The reason that you can read your own energy so clearly is generally because you've consented to having your energy read. That ex that you want to know about though? You didn't ask them. It can make it a lot harder to gain information this way as well. Sometimes impossible depending on the person that you're trying to read. That means that if you get anything at all from that person in a reading, it's against their will. And if you wouldn't want someone asking about you in a tarot reading, then don't expect other people to feel any differently. Chances are they don't want you doing that either. So instead of asking things like, how does X feel about me? Or what is Y's intentions? It's always better to rephrase these questions to centralize the self, or the client that you're working with. For example, what can I do in this situation to ease my stress or anxiety? Or, will X's actions impact me in some way? And how may they impact me? Oh my god, just drive better. There are roadworks going on all the way around my house. And people don't know how to drive when there are roadworks. It's been a lot of beeping. By focusing on yourself, your timeline, and your actions, you are more likely to get a clearer result based on your context. And you don't have to go violating other people's energetic space just to get an answer. Next, we're going to be talking about avoiding when questions. This is something that I have said many times before, but tarot doesn't do timing well. I should have this put on a t-shirt at this point. Tarot is not made for time-related readings. And there are many other mediums that you can use for more accurate time-related readings, like pendulum readings, for instance. If you must ask for a time frame, then keep it general and simple, rather than trying to pin down any specific date. There are systems that you can use to predict timing using tarot cards, and these are usually based on the astrological calendar, rather than the Georgian one that we use for our day-to-day use. I will link some varieties of these types of systems in the description. I've found these over the years just simply from trying my best to serve client needs. But generally speaking, these all fall under the Western astrology category, because I have yet to find a tarot deck that has been developed specifically for Vedic astrology. That would be really cool though, and I would be very interested if anybody has found one that does this. Please link it in the comments if you know. When using tarot, it's best to give yourself a sense of time scale and not exact timing. Will something be really quick? Will something take a long time? Questions like these will be answered relative to the situation that you are in, and not by how societally we would consider something being a long or short time. A long time to reply to an email might be a few days, but a long time for a parcel to arrive might be a month. A long time to wait for somebody to apologize might be a lifetime. It's a relative thing, and most tarot decks are expecting you to understand this. Timing questions in these situations also don't allow for changes in your own personal timeline. Let me explain further. So you sit down to do a reading and you ask a question like, let's say, when will I get a promotion at work? And you pull the Seven of Pentacles. That might read initially like it will take a long time, but with hard work you'll get there. And then you get fired. So was your prediction wrong? Not necessarily. We could look at the greater context of the situation to see why this card was still correct. It just didn't mean what you necessarily thought it meant, given the fact that you were asking for timing. Why did you want the promotion? What is your current job? Do you like the field of work that you're in? Do you have any other passions that you want to pursue? If any of the answers to these questions suggested that you kind of just wanted more money and you didn't actually want to be in the job that you were in, then the Seven of Pentacles takes on a completely different meaning. If you want more money, the Seven of Pentacles tells you that you need to be able to do that sustainably, and misery is not sustainable. The Seven of Pentacles does represent hard work, yes, but it's hard work towards your skill and craft. If you lost your job somewhere, then chances are it's because your skills weren't being fully utilized in that position. You need to be somewhere else to see this fact. And the money will come when you open that opportunity up to yourself. This takes time, but how much time will be relative to how you act. Given the information that you have been provided, you would be able to act differently than what would happen if you didn't know. And therefore, the timing of all of these things would change. This is not to say that tarot is infinitely wrong all of the time because of this. This is just to say that trying to define these exact parameters using this medium doesn't really work the way that you anticipate it would. Okay, let's move on to keeping it simple. This is possibly one of my favorite ones to mention because it's the one that people get tripped up on the most when they first start reading tarot cards. It's such an easy trap to fall into. Keep your questions simple. You think your question's simple? Make it simpler. If you've had readings before and you've told the reader the context of the situation before they actually do your reading for you, chances are that that reader is now boiling down that information into its basic components to be able to ask the cards. This is boiling it down to its most necessary components. And this is what you have to do when you're reading for yourself. The simplicity of the question is less to do with the length of the question itself and more to do with being specific. Another thing that I emphasize while I'm teaching people tarot is that specific questions get specific answers. You cannot expect a very focused answer when your question is not particularly focused. So while your question should be simple, it should also be directly specific to what you want to know. Specificity also doesn't necessarily mean more detail. It's more about how you are phrasing the question, and this is also why I emphasize it here. In phrasing the question specifically, we get a more direct answer back. For example, here are two questions you could ask your deck. Which do you think is more specific? A, how do I make more money? Or B, what can I do to make more money in my current field? Don't worry, I'll give you a second. While the first question is more vague and only tells us how to make more money without any context as to how, the second question gives us more specificity. It tells us that A, you want to work in the same field, B, that you are willing to work for the money that you want, and C, that you need more money from your work. While the first question might give you the same results, the second question will automatically give you a more focused and detailed answer. The first question will always be a broader answer than what the second one would be. On the topic of broad questions, actually, we should cover yes, no, and closed questions. Closed questions are questions where the only answers that you can give are confirmation or denial. This usually ends up being a yes or a no. Now, I have just recently done a video on how you can use yes, no, or closed questions with tarot cards, but please don't use them in your normal readings. Please? Tarot is not the system to be asking yes or no questions. It's not built to do that. There are other forms of divination that you can use for yes or no questions, but tarot is not one of them. I'm not going to repeat myself too much here, as I have literally just done a video on it, but basically by asking closed questions in larger readings, you restrict your deck's ability to be able to give you the messages that you might need to be given. These cards are full of nuanced and subtle meaning, and that means that there's a lot of information that can be provided by tarot cards. And as such, you want to be able to provide these cards with the best possible opportunity to be able to send these messages to you, to present the information that you might need. I'll provide an example here too, mostly to help people that might find it difficult to expand questions. So the question, will this relationship last, for instance, is a closed question, because you can only answer yes or no. That's not a good question for something like tarot, as we've established. So let's expand expand that question to be a little more open-ended. The focus of this question is on the relationship's longevity, whether it's going to be successful. So we could look at some of the things that make a relationship successful. The heck, we could just ask, what will make this relationship successful? To keep the sentiment of the question whilst also removing the closed aspect. We could also take a more literal approach. We could ask, what is the timeline of this relationship? While tarot doesn't do exact timing very well, it can give a general sense of timing and timelines, relative to other stuff around it. Instead of asking for the exact amount of time, or just whether or not something is going to last at all, this is where you start using your interpretation abilities to get a sense of the length of the relationship. So if you do a relationship reading and you're getting all swords, that relationship's going to be really, really short. Because swords and cards with an air quality to them generally indicate a short amount of time. But if you're getting a bunch of pentacles, that's going to be a very, very long relationship. Pentacles generally deal with the physical, with the earth, with the longer cycles of our lives. This timeline also then provides us with a lot more information, like whether the relationship will actually be good. Or whether it's going to be emotionally scarring. We place far too much emphasis on the longevity of relationships and never about whether they're actually good for us. By asking closed questions like this as well, it can kind of act as a form of manipulation towards your cards and your readings. Kind of tricking your psyche into giving you the answer that you want instead of the answer that you need to hear. This kind of thing doesn't really help anybody involved either. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help your clients, it doesn't help the friends that come to you in confidence asking you for advice. It really doesn't help the spirits that you're trying to work with. In fact, in some cases, this kind of behavior can piss off the spirits and deities that you're working with. And that can cause a whole host of issues to arise for you. So for everyone's benefit, it is worth asking broader and more open-ended questions. And the last thing on this list, the thing that I think will help the most in people building tarot questions, is understanding what tarot actually does. Most of the time, I don't think people really understand what tarot actually is, and that's why a lot of people have so much trouble with forming good questions for their cards. The most important rule of good tarot questions is remembering that the cards themselves aren't the magical part of the practice. You are. Tarot cards are merely a tool for accessing the intuitive realm, and sometimes the spiritual and the divine realm if you're working with spirits and deities. But the bulk of the work is happening internally. You have to treat the act of tarot reading like asking yourself a question. And we also have to be comfortable with the information that we might receive. The information that we receive from tarot cards might be upsetting, challenging, and sometimes completely counter to our current worldview. As someone that reads tarot, you're gonna have to be okay with coming to the table, reading your cards, and being told things you didn't realize you needed to be told. This might be my core advice for anyone that wants to do tarot, really. Tarot is a medium of reflection and transformation of the self, if you are willing to listen. But you must be willing to listen to all of it, and to give the cards the best chance to pass the information on to you. Okay, I've done enough talking. Let's go to final thoughts. I hope this video could help you in creating more tarot-friendly questions, and let me know if your results improve by using these principles. It would be interesting to see who is benefiting from these kind of principles in their readings. But, as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. But until then, stay blessed, my friend.